Ave cohort. It is Saturday, which means that it is time for Pilum Teaches DCS. We're going to be getting up to a handful of things here today. It's going to include a little bit of nighttime operations, as the sun will be going down while we are in the midst of handling our business. We're also going to be working with the SUU-25 flare dispenser pods, the SUU-23 gun pod, and the BLU-107 Durandal anti-runway cratering bomb. So with that, let's go ahead and get into it. And as always, this is a Pantheon Initiative official type training seminar, working specifically with the F-4 Phantom II. Let's go ahead and get into the office here. And we're going to take our customary walk around the aircraft. You can tell through the pause menu here at the moment, we have a bit of weather, which is going to continue to be a factor in the things that we're doing today. And on board the aircraft, we have some different toys. And we're going to work outboard to inboard here. We have the SUU-23A gun pod. It is a 20mm autocannon installment of the M61 Vulcan gun, just like what we have in the nose of the jet. But each of these gun pods carries 1,200 rounds of ammunition in it, as compared to 600 rounds in the internal gun. So we do have a little bit more bang bang for the dollar there on that one. And I believe that the default mixture on that one is a combat mix of HE and armor-piercing rounds with tracers. Inboard of that, we have our usual defensive allotment. We're just going to go with the Sparrows and the Sidewinders there. But these longer containers here is the BLU-107B Durandal anti-runway cratering bomb. It is a two-stage weapon. And as you can see here on the back, we've got these little caps that contain a drogue parachute. What happens is that this bomb will get released, the chute will deploy, and move the bomb into a vertical attitude with respect to the runway. Once it is vertical, that aft canister will disappear, it will eject, and then this fin section here has a rocket motor on the bottom of it, which will propel the Durandal into the concrete to blow up underneath the concrete. One of the things that you look at with the runway is there's a lot of pavement and concrete out here. And the unfortunate part is that if you just drop general purpose bombs over the top of this thing, yeah, you'll put some dents and dings and craters and scrapes and things like that, but they can be almost immediately filled in with some concrete. You know, you put some concrete in there, you mix it up, you make sure that it is level with the rest of the runway, and the runway could be back in business in a matter of hours. However, with Durandal, using its rocket-propelled propulsion there, and there's a similar weapon system that the Soviets used, the Betab 500 with the parachute on it, and it operates in the same principle. The Durandal will punch through the concrete and actually blow up underneath the runway, causing a void space in the softer terrain underneath, which will then cause the runway to not just, explode and suffer the usual blast effects as you would expect, but it would cause the runway to sink a little bit, which will require the removal of concrete, filling in of the void space and hole, and then paving over it in order to make that runway operational again. So even just a handful of those Durandal type craters can really render a runway out of commission for a much longer period of time than simply sending a repair crew out there to dust it off and get it operational very quickly. Last but not least, here on the inboard pylons, we have a pair of the SUU-25 flare dispensers. Each one of these pods carries 8 candle flares in it, and they are dispensed very similar to, as one would, the CBU-2 dispenser pod. There's a little canister with a drogue chute on it, and the little microcharge ejects that canister after the aircraft. The parachute deploys, and a couple seconds after leaving the aircraft, the candle flare will ignite, and it will float gently down over the target area. What this will do, if you release it at the right altitude, is broadly illuminate your target area. Now, for example, our target today is going to again be the Brest airfield. So if we put a handful of candle flares over the top of this thing, we can light this area up, and that will allow even daytime sensor weapons like the AIM-65B or A model Maverick that does not have a thermal imaging seeker head to shine and be able to see what all is going on here. Just a second there on that one. There we go. All right, so our target airfield today, there are a handful of things that are down here. Some of these are not our targets. Namely, a lot of these IFVs and things are going to be blasted a little bit. Our primary target is going to be the runway itself. We're going to be dropping Durandals. And this nice, neat row of trucks that we're going to be hosing down with some gunfire. We'll also be putting some marker flares over the top of the target. And with the sun already mostly going down, it is probably going to be very dark by the time we get here. So we're going to have to rely on our own navigation, what our own limited visibility and things will be able to tell us, and then make sure that we illuminate that area properly so that everybody can conduct their attacks. We are going to be getting gas first. So we could be in need of some fuel following our mission there. We push out to the tanker, rendezvous with it, grab a couple thousand pounds of gas, proceed on to our target, and then come on back. We also know that there's some fog that's going to be rolling in. But we do have some things to help us out. See if I could find a little beacon out here. And we placed one. Yeah, we'll come back for it. But there is a TACAN beacon that's out here that will help us in our navigation back home. Oh, there it is. Yep, little TACAN beacon. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and jump back into the jet. We'll unpause everything and follow our strike force out to go do our part. Since we are going to be rendezvousing with the tanker first, I'm just going to go out here and I have him set as 252 and 11 X-ray. I'm going to dial in our TACAN and everything else ahead of time. Another thing we're going to go ahead and preemptively do is we are looking to drop flares first. Morning, Ihort. is I'm going to go ahead and set my quantity selector to 1. And I'm going to dial my interval preemptively up to 50. With the expectation that we're going to drop the flares out there first, and then come back around and use the Durandals. I'm just going to jump in the back seat here and make sure we get our other systems going.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
I don't know why it gives me a wingman. I definitely told it. Everybody else has a client. Well, we'll go with it.
So we planning to go downtown on this one? Okay, let me prepare my rudder.
A little bit of stutter is not nice as a touch. See if that clears up here as we get up and away from Hanover.
Engine's good, airspeed off the peg. $80 knots. 100 knots. Nails, 1 o'clock. We've got nails, 1 o'clock. Gears moving. Flaps up. Gear up.
All right. No, that's actually really stutter steppy. I'm going to try restarting here real quick. Bear with me just a moment. We go to fix all of that. Do a complete restart of the game here. Give me a chance to yank those wingmen out of the group too. They really shouldn't be there. Okay. A little bit of Vigan music there. Back into the mission editor there. We'll make those couple minor changes and we'll be back up in the air to continue on with our day's lesson there. Or DCS can crash. That's helpful. Click too quick in the mission editor. All right, let's get back into it. OBS thinking very diligently about actually displaying my Now it's loading, so it's just going to take it a minute before it can process over and throw the things up for you to see. Haven't missed anything yet. We're still just loading the mission. Alright, well, it's loading everything up here. Let's make sure we got our ILS set correctly. So it's going to be 108.70 for the return journey. That's up. Well, it's already looking better. Should be in business. Same things as before. We're going to dial into about 50 millisecond interval. Preemptively set our TACAN up for the tanker. And more or less wait our turn there for the rest of the group. A little bit of a traffic jam as people are making their way around.
It's time to fly. So, are we going to be down in the trenches this go?
That makes sense.
Roger.
Give these fabulous aircraft a little bit of room there.
Engine's good, airspeed off the peg. 80 knots. 100 knots. Nails, 7 o'clock. And nails, 2 o'clock. Flaps up. Gear up. Gears moving.
Caught somebody's wake there.
Alright, got new bogeys. Alright, are you bandits or friendlies?
You're going to tell me that you're a bandit because you're right off the edge of the gimbals there. Alright, while we climb, we're going to go and set our navigation to TACAN, since we're looking for our tanker first. So now our heading arrow and our miles counter there will be looking at our TACAN target.
That's a new bogey, alright. Right 5, 12 miles, 4,000. Target paints, it's a friendly.
Back off the power here a little bit. Let's go ahead and communicate with our tanker.
Nails, 7 o'clock. And nails, 7 o'clock.
Is he on 252 or was he on something different? He is on 252. We, however, were on preset and not manual.
Alright, got a new bogey. Left 5 degrees, 37 miles. Target is a buddy, good IFF.
Alright, so he's at 15,000 feet doing 350 knots indicated at that altitude.
13 miles, 16,000.
He's about 30 miles away, so he's one of those two more distant contacts that we can see on the radar.
Got a new bogey, right 20, 13 miles, 14,500.
Since we are going out here for the purpose of getting gas, we're going to go ahead and leave the throttle settings a little higher.
Heads up, new bogey, left 5, 30 miles, 26,000.
So we can actually get to the tanker.
Target is a buddy, good IFF. Alright, got new bogeys. Alright, checking friend or phone now. We've got a friendly 2-shift, raw, right 10, 12 miles, Angels 16.
Okay, we're 14 miles away from Mr. Tanker. Should be ever so slightly below us, but still above the cloud deck. Okay, so while we're doing that,
We have a bogey, right 25 degrees, 15 miles, 18,000.
and while we're still a distance away from the tanker,
Friendly target, getting IFF returns.
tell Jester to shut his mouth. The main reason for doing so there is, as we've explained in previous instances of tanking, Jester has a habit of trying to provide corrective steering commands. And because his voice lines happen at a time frame that is not always lined up to needing those steering commands, he will very frequently become several minutes behind, and thus be not very helpful at all in trying to connect to the tanker. I believe he's coming back. Yeah. turn ahead of him a little bit here so we can fly a little bit of an intercept. Will help us get to him a little more efficiently. As we turn inside his turn. There's half a mile. Our refueling door is open, so we should automatically call ready pre-contact when we are in good parameters.
Ready pre-contact.
And now it is just a matter of flying the lights. And dealing with the fact that this tanker always turns, no matter what aircraft I'm flying, no matter what it is I'm doing, as soon as I go to try and hook up on it.
Ready pre-contact.
It says disengaged, but that's only because they're getting back pressure as we get to 10,000 pounds. Now we're off.
Ready pre-contact.
You want to get just a little bit more gas. Okay, that should be enough. Let's go ahead and disconnect. And we're going to go ahead and fall back. Tell the tanker that we're done. Let MCOM know that we are done doing our job there. Now that everybody's on their way, let's go ahead and set about turning out our lights once we get settled. And we'll tell Jester he can communicate with us again. And autopilot and the hold is on. Go and turn the master arm on. We're going to be using rockets and dispensers and direct mode. And that will set us up for our center pylons there. See, everybody's kind of already on their way. We're actually going to set up for waypoint 2.
Got some contacts. Well, well, what do we have here? Bandits or friendlies? Wilco. We have a friendly 2-ship. Bra, left 5, 17 miles. Angel 17. Alright, next turn point is in.
And while we're on our journey here, we'll talk a little bit about the flare dispenser pods that we're going to be using first. Once we get centered up. And then a little bit of the navigation type challenges that we're going to be facing during this mission, as there's going to be several of them throughout your F-4 Phantom career. Alright, so in the first place we have the dispenser pods. Now these dispensers do deploy flares. They are parachute driven, and the natural inclination that you might first have on it is, well, I want to be up as high as I can to make sure that those work and that those illuminate a brightest area as possible. The reality is that after about 5,000 feet or so, the effectiveness of that light down on the ground level is greatly reduced. The flares themselves burn for somewhere between 3 and 6 minutes. So you do have plenty of time while they are in float free fall to keep an area illuminated there. But if you drop them too high, it's not going to allow that light to very clearly reach the ground and provide the kind of illumination that we're looking for. And if you drop them too low, then they're going to hit the ground before they completely burn out, which is also not very helpful. So the sweet spot that we're wanting to aim for is for about 5,000 feet AGL over the top of the target area, and release them then. This is kind of an advantage that the SAB 100 for the Russian side of the fence has a little bit of an advantage, because it is a free fall iron bomb that deploys its marker candles as it falls. So they can, throw the bomb, and the bomb will fall fast enough and far enough that at least a few of the flares will provide the kind of illumination that you're looking for as those things get kicked out. The illumination provided by the Su-25 is quite a bit better overall than something like the SAB 100 or illumination rockets on helicopters and things like that. But it does have its own limitations there, so as long as you're flying in them, you can make that work. The F-5 can carry these, the F-4 can carry these, the F-14 can carry these, the A-10 can, the Harrier can. There's a lot of aircraft that can carry the Su-25 dispenser pod, which really does make it work out rather nice, particularly at night, and particularly when dealing with those kinds of challenges. The other main problem that we have for the F-4 Phantom in particular
got a bogey, right 5, 13 miles.
Is that we do experience INS drift.
Getting no IFF response. Target is a bandit.
I really beg to differ there on you there, Jester.
Bogey, right 5, 10 miles, 15,000.
And because of INS drift, the waypoint markers that we're going to see are...
Got a bogey, right 15 miles, 14,500.
Give me a second there.
IFF returns on this one, he paints.
There we go, a little better. So because it drifts, that marker is not always going to be accurate, and the longer you fly without realigning the aircraft, the worse it's going to get. So there does come a point where you have to use a mixture of dead reckoning or other forms of navigation, like TACAN, to really get that precision back. And that's pretty much what we're going to be using on the way home, both if we need to reconnect with the tanker for a couple thousand pounds of gas, and for using the ILS landing system at Hanover to conduct our landing. About 23 miles to go. And it looks like our initial strike aircraft have come in and have conducted some bombing, which is good. But as we can see, the weather is really starting to get foul. We've got a lot of rain coming down, and it is getting darker and darker. At this point, a lot of contrast type weapons. A lot of weapons that are very useful during the daytime, can establish a nice clean contrast lock. You're going to have a lot harder time doing that at night. It's going to be important for us to drop marker flares in the area, both for ourselves and to be able to hit the target that we're looking at. I'm also going to preemptively warm up the Gunpods. Actually, no, I am not. Yeah, no, actually I can. Because I just set... the Gunpods are a little different in that they use the same air-to-air type modes. And if the gun is selected, the pods are up. And those are all by front trigger pull. So we're going to go ahead and leave it in radar for now, just so I don't accidentally spray some gun ammunition that I want to ping onto when we're cruising down over the top of the target. We're just about 22 miles away from Briest. So we're going to go ahead and come off the autopilot, clear our master caution, and get down below the clouds. Not only do we have cloud cover, but we do have some fog that's starting to roll in, which will become an increasingly more problematic situation for us. Mostly on the way home. We're a little above 5,000 feet HEL. Some pockets of rain that are down there. But even so, we're going to conduct all of our attacks. And the B-52s are now dropping their bombs. They're dropping a lot of bombs. Some of the impacts we may see the results of. Yep, there they go.
Alright, those are some nails, 2 o'clock. And, nails, 2 o'clock.
And that's because they came in and did a bunch of magic work. Doesn't mean that we don't get to either. Because while they are dropping a plethora of Mark 82s, it's not going to be super effective in completely eliminating the base. I'm going to come over here, cruise over the top of the target area, and we're going to start kicking out some flares. Here we go. 1's out. 2's out. 3's out. 4's out. And as we can see now, that is all very brightly illuminated. And it is unfortunate that it looks like they killed pretty much all of the trucks we're looking at. We're still going to make a gun run on them. I think we're going to go ahead and switch to Durandals though. And reset our pickle ripple quantity selector there to 6. And those flares we dropped probably about 3,500 feet HEL. You can really see that they are brightly illuminating that field. At this point, that should be more than enough light that if somebody was coming through, looking to drop Mavericks or other EO weapons, and it should be enough. We're gonna line up here, still in direct mode, and now that we're getting over the field, holding pickle. I've paused here for a minute because I kind of want to show this one off. Less right down the center here. Let's go ahead and unpause. We'll climb out. And now we got even more meaningful craters there. All along the runway. Let's check in with AWACS real quick.
Magic 1-1, in field 1. Request bogey dope.
Alright, they're still 50 miles out, so we got a little bit of wiggle room. And we'll be able to make a gun burst here. So we can see those illumination flares are really starting to wear out. We managed to get a couple of good attacks in. It's not what we wanted. That was in fact what we wanted to avoid. Hopefully we still got a little bit of gunplay in those pods. I suppose we'll see. No, they're empty. Alright, with those guys being empty, then we'll fly for home. Now these Su-25 flares that we were using, something I can tell you about those is once the flares are deployed, they do now, as of one of the recent DCS batches here in the last couple months, actually produce an infrared heat source that heat-seeking missiles can lock onto. It is roughly about 4 times more powerful than your own flares. However, with a 2-second arming delay, you know, the usability of that in a dogfight is very limited. But you can deploy those even during the daytime over an area protected by infrared SAMs. We got 6,000 pounds. And about a 50-mile journey to go. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the pods and racks, as they are a lot less helpful for us right now.
We've got what looks like a friendly two-ship draw, right 5 miles, Angel 12.
Magic 1-1, infield 1. Request bogey dope. Enfield 1, Magic 1-1. Bra 1.
See a lot of snow reflecting off there because it's actually very, very cold out right now.
19 miles, 14,500. IFS valid, Danny to friendly. Got a new bogey, right 5, 24 miles, 16,000. IFS is good, Danny to friendly.
Alright, so while we're on the way home, our TACAN is pointed at the tanker at the moment, which very helpful, but I don't think we're going to need it, at least on the way in.
We have a contact, right 5 degrees, 18 miles. He's heading to the friendly.
So let's try and set up for home, which I believe should be 126. $75 miles. Let's do a quick check here.
We've got a bogey, right 539 miles, 17,000.
That's about right.
Positive IFS, target is a friendly.
We're also getting positive VOR.
Those are contacts, all right. Well, what do we have here? Bandits or friendlies? We've got a bow.
As you can hear that Morse code going on.
Left 50 degrees, 15 miles, Angel 17, and a friendly, bra, right 5, 18 miles, Angel 17. Okay, that's a new bogey, left 25, 27 miles.
Okay.
IFS
We know
is
the
good.
course of our airbase here.
We have a bogey, right 5, 12 miles.
Roughly 282.
17,500.
Looks like that's coded in for.
IFS returns on this one, he pays.
I'm going to go ahead and leave that as is.
5 degrees, 16 miles, 17,500. Positive IFS, positive IFS.
Still a good healthy distance away from Hanover. So right now we're still just in the cruise mode. And I'm going to offset a little bit to the right. So I can try and be a little more lined up with the runway that I want.
Bogey, left 40, 41 miles. 3,500. Positive IFF return. Target is a friendly. Heads up,
And we're a little more lined up with where we want to be.
nails, 6 o'clock.
Start steering a little bit more towards it. What I'm doing at this point is I'm more or less trying to put myself on the runway heading while still many miles away from where it is I want to go. I'm using the TACAN beacon, which is going to give me a straight line to where it's located on the runway, which is here. So it's not quite lined up with the runway, but it's going to be close enough that we can at least get to the place where in theory we might be able to see it. We're using the VOR, which should provide us with needle steering as we get closer. We're getting close enough now, though, that I need to start lowering my altitude. And since we are well past the point of anything being dangerous there for us, I'm going to turn the brights on, make sure the landing light is actually set. Look out the wings, make sure the lights are actually on and blinking and doing their thing. And we will begin our descent. Paying attention to our altimeter here, especially as we descend very daringly down through the clouds.
All right, got new bogey. Identifying. We have a bogey. Bra, left 5, 22 miles, 100 feet. And a friendly 2-ship. Bra, left 5, 21 miles.
It's very obvious we're in West Germany because we got all these nice soft white lights everywhere as compared to the ambers that we see in East Germany. It's an important first step.
Checking IFF.
Well, one of the things you can pick out very clearly is that the front glass of the Phantom is a little bit tinted, as we should definitely be seeing all those town lights, which we can barely see through the front glass. We can pick those out a little bit better through the night vision optics. So let's go ahead and get rid of our bright glaring light. And we'll use the other vision systems that are available to us to continue to come in. There's our runways. That's Hanover, and we're not quite lined up, but we are close enough now that we should be able to get some steering cues for the instrument landing system. In this case, we are setting ourselves up for runway 09 or left, or I'm sorry, 27 left.
I see a contact. Left 55 degrees, 18 miles, 4,500.
And now that it's quite a bit brighter
Positive IFF return. Target is a friendly.
and the weather's a little bit clearer, I don't have to worry so much about using the night vision system there. We'll try and treat this one as much as we can like an instrument landing, so we are going to go ahead and bump the seat up. We'll be paying attention to our airspeed and to the needles, trying to keep those centered. And adjusting our trim here for flight as if we were coming into land as any other time. 250, gears coming down. Starting to see some snow. 225, flaps coming down.
Bandits are friendly. We've got a bogey, bra, left 20 degrees, 4 miles, 4,000. Those are contacts, all right. Well, let's see. Bandits are friendly is checking out.
We are a little under glide slope.
Alrighty, gear, flaps, pressure, warning lights, anti-skid.
But we're coming up on it. A little under the glide slope now. And as fortunate as it is, that very high-pitched tone is actually being on where we need it to be. We'll reduce that down so it's a little less intense for folks. About 150 knots. Well, 170-ish there now. Landed long, but we do have that drogue chute, so we're going to rely on it. We are now down, safe and clear. comes the B-52s touching down. Biggest things with the Phantom in particular, navigating at night, is that if you don't have a lot of good visual references to use, which it's nighttime, and the odds are not in your favor that you're going to have them. In this case, we were augmented not just with the nighttime, but it was also foggy with fog rolling in. And I set the keys up here that fog was going to get worse as the mission progresses. And then you also have an INS system, which is somewhat inherently unreliable, a little bit by design and a little bit in purpose. It's kind of an earlier model system, a precursor to the time frame of having oodles and oodles of satellites in orbit around the Earth to provide continuous GPS monitoring that aircraft rely on to this day, to know exactly where they are and to obtain a level of precision with some of their bombs within single-digit meters. The F-4 is a jet that is definitely before that time. And while perhaps in the DMOS birds we might see some early systems that have the better and more advanced navigation type features, for the particular variant of the F-4E that we're using right now, we don't. So we really have to kind of rely on a variety of other things to keep us going. Some of that is, if you do happen to find a visual reference, something that is clear and distinct, like a particular mountain range. Or a lake, or a ridgeline, or a city that you can look at quite clearly and go, oh yeah, no, I see the Brandenburg Gate there. That's absolutely, Berlin. Morning, Chief. Then you can figure out where you are. You can update your INS system, and you can have the level of accuracy that you're looking at again. We got coffee as usual here this morning, Chief. This time it is just a vanilla flavored coffee. Nothing super fancy about that. So a lot of the things that we were looking at is a mixture of accepting that the INS system has drift in it and that it's really going to kind of super broadly point to where we need to go. And again, depending upon how well you aligned your jet is how well you can mitigate that and really delay the onset of the inevitable. You can never really fully get rid of that drift. That drift kind of is a little bit eternal when it comes to the jet.
Generator's up. I can start the alignment. Okay.
But that's where TACAN really comes into being, because TACAN navigation, at the very least, will point to where things need to go. Even if the compass is not giving you the most accurate of information, because it's basically going, all right, I'm receiving a signal, I'm going to provide steering information to point at that signal. So as long as it can see that signal, you can point at that signal and you can get to where you need to go. In the event that all of those things fail, you do have kind of a free-floating standby compass up here in the top corner that's being illuminated by this flashlight now. The big thing with that is that you do kind of... Jester, we're home, man. Calm down. The big thing about that compass that you have to understand is that if you're in a bank or a turn, even a gentle one, it can really offset and throw off what that magnetic compass is showing you. So that's kind of a last ditch. I can't see anything, but I know broadly speaking, I need to fly west to go home. You can use that to at least point in that direction and then find other landmarks to start making your way home, or get to a point where you can have better TACAN navigation again. Some air bases, but not all air bases in DCS, have an ILS system, an instrument landing system. And in this particular case here at Hanover, we do have two, one for both directions on the airbase. And as you can see here, we have runway 27, which operates on a frequency of 108.70. And for runway 09er at 109.50. You can find those values in the mission editor for any base that has it, which it does not show here in the F10 menu, but there's a sort of white cone pointing off either end of the base to indicate that an ILS is there, and broadly speaking, the range in degrees that it kind of has for broadcasting its information and what frequency it operates on. So you can locate those things in advance in the mission editor without clicking on the base here to figure that one out. If this base had a TACAN, it would list it here. In this case, this one does not. However, if we come over here to Wunstorf, this one does have a TACAN. It's on 116 X-ray. It also has an ILS for runway 26, which is here. And overall, it is almost a mile long. So it's a long enough runway that you can land pretty much any aircraft on that one and roll it to a complete stop. As you can see with the TACAN beacon, it is nearly aligned with the center line, but not quite aligned with the center line. So even a TACAN beacon, like going to an aircraft carrier, going to a runway that has one of these things, your TACAN steering information will always point to the beacon and not necessarily straight line down the runway. So that is something that you kind of have to pay attention to as you're coming in to make final approach, is to really reconcile that fact that, you know, your TACAN needles and everything else is going to be pointing at the beacon on the way in. So at the very least, you'll know if you overfly the beacon as the compass suddenly spins around and points in the opposite direction. But for the most part, that will get you to where you need to go. If you're within 1 nautical mile of this beacon, assuming that the weather conditions aren't absolute dog water all the way down to 1,500-foot visibility or less, where, you know, much like a scary, spooky Case 3 carrier landing in similar type conditions with a rocking boat where the boat does not appear until your wheels are underneath it, you should be able to get close enough to the airbase to pick out where the runway lights are at night and put yourself down on top of them, right where you need to go. Using the ILS will help get your lineup set up and ready to go, as it will provide, as long as the correct information is there, both steering and glide slope information. Sometimes you do have to make sure that your HSI or HSD is pointed down the runway to give you the accurate or most accurate steering information. But again, something to keep in mind with the F-4 is that all of those compass headings, all of that information is subject to INS drift. So as we experienced on our way in here, I originally had set that HSD for the runway to be pointing just about 281, more or less straight line down this runway, and that information was not correct. It was showing me a compass heading that I needed to fly something a little more like this in order to make that reality happen because we had drift. So I had to manually change that to try and get the needles to reconcile themselves being more or less down the end of the runway by steering slightly, off center speed and making the needle line up with what I was visually seeing outside of the aircraft, since I actually had enough visibility to make that happen. Well, looks like we had a B-52 problem happen there. It's unfortunate, but that's the AI. So let's go ahead and get into TAC view, and we will assess this flight and talk a little bit about the weapon systems that we used. Unfortunately, we weren't able to put the gun pod where we wanted to go, but we did, spray 1,200 rounds out with it, more or less out off into space, which the reason why that happened, I can kind of walk through here real quick while we're sitting here in the rain. And that comes down to these two dial selectors, the interval and quantity. When it comes to anything that you're using in the air-to-ground arena, the ripple interval, or more or less, actually more accurate, is the impulse interval for how many impulses of release bombs or fire rockets or whatever else you're doing occurs. Do it this quickly, this many times. So in the case of our gun pod, when we sprayed, all the rounds of ammunition out at nothing, I was telling it we were going to use a half-second interval, and because I was set up for the Durandals, 6 times each. Well, the gun pod is going to spray out at least 10 rounds worth of ammunition to clear itself automatically between trigger pulls, and it was basically going, all right, cool, you push the pickle button, so I'm going to give you one burst for half a second. I'm going to take another 10 rounds after that to clear myself, but you want 6 bursts worth of power. So, and we ran out of bullets. You can use this interval selector to control how quickly your rockets are fired or your other dispensers are utilized. If you use a smaller dispensing interval, you'll have a much tighter, faster pattern of rockets or cluster bombs or whatever the hell else off the jet, multiplied again by your quantity selector. So what I really should have done was have brought this back down to 1 and made sure that I didn't actually have the pylon selected, so I couldn't accidentally spray bullets when I meant to drop, the rest of my parachutes for the little lights. All right, let's go ahead and close this real quick and get out to TAC view. Just close DCS down here in the background. All right, let's load up our mission file here. Nothing super fancy here to start with. We went up, we made contact with the tanker. B-52s got too close to one another. And at this point, we were on our way in under cover of fog. We had two groups of B-52s that were out in front of us. But we can see that their bombs came in and ran more or less right down the middle of the runway, which is what they were supposed to do. It did kill the targets that I had set aside for a gun run, but that's okay. We were coming in here to do a bunch of other things too. So this one, we came down here and we're going to be deploying parachute flares. We are somewhat low. We're 1,300 feet AGL. But this particular flare pattern brightly illuminated the whole combat area at this altitude. We're able to go out and come back. And now we're coming down here. Yeah, we're only 370 feet up. And these go straight down the runway as we drop these Durandals. Now, we talked about these before. They've got that parachute on the back, and we got to see it because I paused the server here after I dropped the 6 and then followed one down. But that parachute arrests the bomb's forward movement very quickly. So you can deploy these more or less right over the threshold of the runway. And unless you're going stupid fast, you're probably going to get those in the right position. As they heel over and they get to a near vertical point, the rocket motor fires. You see that here. They go from that nice, gentle, gravity-assisted free fall to whoop. And they just put craters all over the runway, which these trucks here represent about the halfway point of the runway. So most of this runway is completely cratered now, not just from the B-52s dropping a bunch of Mark 82s over it, because those will leave holes as well. But these Durandal craters are going to be a lot harder for the base to repair. It takes a lot longer to take care of that damage. And because we managed to pulverize most of the runway, this runway is completely out of commission. There is no way for an aircraft to either go down to the opposite end here, turn around and use the first 20% of the runway to take off with any kind of a meaningful combat load without running into a crater and immediately blowing themselves up. There's no way for an aircraft to land on either direction of the runway without immediately hitting one of those craters and blowing themselves up. So this runway is dealt with. That is off the cards and off the table for the enemy to utilize until such time that it is repaired. Now, because we had some illuminations in there, our CAS aircraft were actually able, and you can kind of see this one, they can't see these aircraft or these vehicles down here because it's too dark. We didn't have illumins in that area. The illumins we did have that were still up were on the other side, but it allowed enough of a contrast locked that they just completely pulverized those armor pieces that are there. Now we came over here and I meant to drop more illuminations, and it did. But unfortunately, we fired 2,400 rounds worth of gunpod ammunition, and that was that. We did come back and drop more flares over the target area. These were done at about 3,000 feet. Well, 2,100 to 3,000 feet. So that area is now very brightly illuminated for another few minutes. Oh, very probable. All right, so at this point we were coming home. cruising. Our cap aircraft decided to go party with the farmers so that we didn't have to. B-52s get into the pattern. Touchdown. B-52 comes down. Technically speaking, the other B-52s there came down. This guy's just our... Good job, AI. Dynamic campaign ready. And yeah, go back and look at some of this here. So again, much of the reason why we're putting these flares out here over the target is, especially if we're working with other aircraft that can't see in the dark, that don't have access to either their own advanced thermal imaging or night vision type equipment. You know, this is how it was done. You'd get somebody in there who could go, yeah, I think this is probably about it, and then just put a bunch of flares over the area. And while those flares were up, for the couple of minutes that those are airborne, you rain hell. All right, so we released these flares at 13:58:18. And I bombed that flare, which got rid of it, so we'll not use him as an indicator. All right, that flare pops out of the jet, 1, 2, and illuminates here. So, yeah, still same 158:18. And this one stopped effectively illuminating anything around it. Almost 3.5 minutes later. Or almost 3 minutes later. Just over 3 minutes later, rather. That is a lot of burn time off those flares from low altitude. Because we could have dropped those another couple thousand feet up, like this one. This one came off the jet just under 3,000 feet AGL at 14:02. We'll say at this point here is when they exactly. Chief hits on that one. We talked about that earlier. But yeah, right about at this point, 5 minutes later, that flare burns out. That really gives you a lot of staying power there. So yeah, the optimal altitude that you want to try and put those at, roughly somewhere between 2 and not really much more than 3,000 or 4,000 feet. If you get up above 3,500 to 4,000 feet, they're really not going to provide the kind of illumination that you're looking for, because they're going to spend most of their time burning and exposing the area to light at a point where the light's not going to reach the ground effectively and not provide the kind of contrast that those different weapon systems need in order to get their job done. It might be enough for a human pilot, somebody who has, phenomenal type eyesight and can see ground targets from tens of miles away, might be able to use that little pinprick of light to go, okay, that's enough of a contrast that is definitely an armored shaped target. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this with an ATGM off this hind and destroy it. You all know that I mean Ketchup, but the rest of the audience that might be watching this one later may not know who Ketchup is. I mean, then again, he might. He's pretty famous on the intertubes. He's got a YouTube video on the F-14 that's seen a lot of views. But that little bit of light might be enough to go, that's an armored target, I'm going to go ahead and kill it. But, you know, if you're going to have the AI do anything along those lines, you really do kind of need a little bit more illumination than that. If you're trying to rely on Petrovich, assuming he's not asleep at the wheel, he's going to need a little bit more light to do that kind of work. So having those illumination objects down there really does make a lot of things easier for a lot of people, even if they do have advanced systems on board the aircraft like thermal imaging targeting pods and, you know, all the fancy schmancy type things that you can make that work with. It's sometimes still better to be able to look outside the aircraft with a much wider field of view than a toilet paper roll and see what's going on in the combat area. So dropping flares over the top of a target at night, extremely helpful. It's also something that a lot of the older type aircraft, because again, we talked about this one earlier, this Su-25 pod can be carried by a lot of aircraft. Many of them are somewhat earlier generation type machines. Things like the F-4, obviously, but the F-5, the A-10, the Harrier II, all of those aircraft can carry Su-25 illumination pods to drop these little flares and things out there to do the work. There are similar pieces of equipment for Soviet-type aircraft. Your markers and parachute flares that you can drop out of the Su-25. There's the SAB-100 bomb that deploys parachute flares that you can drop from a variety of different Soviet-type aircraft. So the option exists to have these flares regardless of what kind of platform is being flown, and their employment is all about the same way, with only the fine differences between the individual systems governing what you should be dropping where and the kind of pattern that it's going to leave. There are illumination rockets that are available for helicopters, and they are mostly effective, but they suffer from a very short burn time, a smaller illumination area, and, you know, already being super low to the ground. Even if they had the kind of burn time that these different candles have for the Su-25, the system themselves is so low to the ground that they are very quickly going to fall and hit the ground and no longer be effective doing the kind of job that they need. The Viggen also carries illumination weapons that can be deployed. The flight profile for making that happen is interesting, to say the least. I've done that one a couple of times before, working with Mander to try and make that happen. But the all-or-nothing approach with the Viggen more or less means that you come up and you will throw illumination bombs to cover this area, and then you go home and you leave. And it's going to be somebody else's responsibility to try and target that area and make magic happen. Toss bombing the bombs with the Viggen like that for its illumination system really kind of gives you about half the time that these candle flares will give you. Because again, you're usually doing low to high with that one. You're putting the bombs over the top of the target area. And since you're already low altitude to begin with those, you're really not going to get the same kind of float time on those flares that other systems would get the benefit of. That really covers everything about those marker flares. Going back to the Durandal. Durandal is a very potent weapon system. Its exclusive purview is the destruction of runways. It's not the kind of bomb system that I would use for, oh, look, there's a convoy, let's go ahead and drop Durandals on a convoy. That's dumb. Don't do that. Use Durandals and similar weapon systems to Durandal for targeting runways. That's their first major purpose. And the nice thing with that, too, is that DCS is coded in such a way where those bombs will take out the runway for a much longer period of time than dropping just strings of iron bombs over the top of the target, because that damage does get repaired over time and will fade, so that it is not super lingering and permanent. Mark 82s, I want to say, takes about 30 minutes of game time before the runway is no longer affected by it. Durandals are quite a bit longer than that. They'll leave craters there that last for a much longer period of time, whether or not they can be seen. Because it's such a specific type weapon, it's also very useful for mission editors to employ as a trigger device to go, hey, we need to knock out this runway. Cool. We're going to use Durandals to do it. Also cool. So I'm going to have a trigger in here that says, when the Durandal is in the zone, start taking care of all this other stuff and make these things happen. I suppose in some ways you could use some heavy penetration GPS bombs like the Penetrator JDAMs and Bunker Buster GBU-24s and things like that. Those will also damage the runway, but Durandal is the best. Its employment profile is exciting. You know, especially if I came rolling down here and there were still Shokas and SA-15s and everything else in the area. While I am coming down here super low and super fast, and if those systems were present, I would be lower and faster. So I wouldn't be doing this kind of a pop-up. That's just asking to get shot. But if I was screaming down over the deck trying to outrate those things, it is possible, but unlikely. Like, those are systems that should probably be killed long before, you come in there and try and put the coup de grace on the runway with the Durandals. The JF-17 can carry those as well. They're listed as the Type 200, so they are a TMU variant of the Durandal, but they operate exactly the same way and do the same kind of job. French were not messing around when they put that weapon system together, which also means that it's available for the Mirage 2000C. Talked a lot about navigating at night. You kind of have to look for your visual references where and how you can find them. And okay, it's looking like we're a little bit back in the upload speeds there. So touching up on what I was typing here in chat for a moment. Yeah, the Mirage 2000 uses the BAP 100s. But functionally it works the very same way as the Durandal. And the Soviet BitTab 500s are the same sort of bomb for the Eastern type aircraft. Does the same sort of purpose, same sort of rocket motor, same mission profile. Good stuff. We talked about the INS drift, talked about those challenges at night, and using an ILS system and TACAN combination to find home or to find a tanker. If you have the option for night vision goggles, use them, take a peek, see how things are. Understand that illumination from within your own aircraft can cause certain types of problems and challenges that will need to be addressed, either through dimming various lights inside the aircraft, which is one of the things that we did while we were on final approach. The front glass of that F-4 is tinted just enough to be a problem at the moderate distances that you can look out at something and go, okay, cool, no, that's 10, 15 miles away, I can start lining up, we're okay, I can do this. So I turned off the pipper to be able to look through the glass with the night vision optics and go, okay, cool, now I can line up. And then once we got a little closer, we were able to see the ground lights, and that worked out. So those are all things to keep in mind with that. Nighttime navigation can be an extreme challenge. It's extremely disorienting, especially if you're flying over water. That disorientation, you really do have to trust your instruments and don't let your brain tell you that the weird-looking, semi-clear thing that your night vision goggles isn't seeing, the water, is the sky, and that you need to roll the aircraft over to go ahead and try and climb up to a place of safety because you're upside down and didn't realize it. It's not the case. Trust your instruments, double-check your instruments. In the event of instrument failure, you're going to have to try and hope a little bit for the best and use other type markings to figure out where you are and what's going on. If you are out over open water in the ocean and it's at night and the weather's bad and you have no instruments, you're in a world of hurt. Try to use whatever instruments you do have, whether it's a standby ADI, even a vertical speed indicator can help you out. You know, lacking anything else, you can at least make sure that you're not falling out of the sky by using the vertical speed indicator to go, okay, I'm up high enough that this shouldn't be an issue. Let's just try and maintain this until I can get to a place where I can have other references and make this work. Standby compass, we talked about that as an option. That one though, remember, because it's free floating, any kind of movement on the aircraft, any kind of heavy bank angle, any kind of heavy G load, any kind of heavy pitch angle, all of those things will make that compass both inaccurate and in some cases not even work, because it's going to be pitched in such a way that it's stuck inside of its own housing and can't free float to tell you what direction is where. All good things to keep in mind. And that was an exciting adventure here for today. We do have other things that we're going to be working on with the F-4, mostly kind of going through full missions, I think, for the next handful of Pilum Teaches DCS. We're also going to make time to spend in the mission editor for Pilum Teaches DCS. So if you have mission editor related questions, be sure to reach out to me in some fashion, whether it's on Discord or through Twitch or something along those lines, and ask those questions, and I'll be sure to do something to try and help answer them. The next mission that I'm working on is an interesting operation that I'm planning for the Pantheon Initiative folks, which will involve rescuing not quite yet Premier Gorbachev from the hands of nefarious Eric Honecker, which will require a lot of close confined precision landing work for helicopters to be able to get in and deploy troops to go get him. It'll require a little bit of fuel management and station time, because it's going to take time for those troops to locate our mission target and safely escort him out, and also pick him up to get him out of there. Meanwhile, for the fixed wing folks, we're going to have to not just get into the zone, but defend it for an extended period of time while those troops are going in there, and making sure that our folks are able to accomplish their mission. So should be an interesting time there with it. A little bit of racing the clock, a little bit of bad weather moving in. So the longer this mission takes, the worse and worse those conditions are going to get. So that'll be fun to plan out. From the mission editor side of the fence, it does mean that I'm going to have to work with some triggers. I'm going to have to work with several different mission editor features for steering aircraft, telling them where to go and what to do, and making sure that the players and pilots are able to get the things that they need done and taken care of. So it'll be a lot of interesting things to show on air as we build that mission together and get that in play. With that, folks, let's go ahead and close things out as we usually do, as we move along to the end credits phase here. First of all the likes, follows, subscribes, Bezos dollars, all of it, it really does matter. It does help things move along. And if you want to spend those dollars here, I very much appreciate it. It is, however, not a super required thing. As a subscriber benefit, though, if we wanted to work together and talk about things in DCS on a one-on-one off-air type scenario, we can make time to do that. That is a benefit that I offer to my subscribers. So consider that one there if you like. If, however, you would prefer to donate a little more directly and provide a tip, you can do that over at coffee.com/PilumJRomar. You can catch this and other VODs on the YouTube channel there at @PilumRomar. And the weekly schedule at the moment is currently displayed there on the screen. Today was Saturday. We had Pilum Teaches DCS. We'll be doing some general type flying there on Monday and classic games to follow. I'm entertaining the idea of playing something slightly different on Monday. We might be adventuring into a zone of some sort. To do some work there. So we'll see how things go on Monday. It really kind of depends on the availability of people and kind of the general feeling about how things are going there after work. Friday's Arma 3. I'm going to be finishing or working towards a finish on the Antistasi campaign. That starts at 6 p.m. Pacific. And then next week we're back again for Pilum Teaches DCS. We'll be spending some more time in the Phantom, getting to know some other systems there with it. With that, folks, always ask for consent, try to communicate as best you can with your partners, and try to be genuinely decent human beings. And I will be catching up with you later on. Thanks for watching and flying, folks. Have a great day.